you add another phase to a project that wasn't part of the initial agreement. And it could be a one-pager, clients have to sign it, but it's really important to have that as part of your continuity because it can save you. Because if something happened in that scope creep, you may be having issues with what happened in that scope creep that aren't protected under your original agreement. So be very mindful of that, and I've never had a client complain about signing an addendum, ever. It's always just been very, very easy because they understand that it wasn't part of it, and it allows you to add another design fee for the work that you're doing, the conceptualization, specifications, purchasing. So it's another way for you to monetize on the project. Boilerplate provisions. You've all seen these. ASID has incredible contract documents that were just redone by Alan Siegel's firm, who's been our counsel for 30, 40 years. I don't know, he's an amazing man. So they just redid the contract documents for both commercial and residential projects. You can buy them as a member for a very, very modest fee. And I don't suggest that you just take them and use them, bless you, but take them and make them your own and then have your attorney sign off on it if that's something that you think would help you to get your contracts more buttoned up, okay? Also photography rights. How many of you have a clause for photography rights in your contract? If you don't, get it. Honestly, not every project is worthy of photography, right? I mean, there are some that you don't really want to put in your portfolio, and that's okay, but you need to make sure that you have the right to put that in your portfolio should you want to, or use it on Instagram, or whatever you're going to do with them. So I always make sure that that's in there. I do have some clients that were very, very high profile, and they don't want their work published with their names or the location. So you can modify the language in that clause so that your clients are comfortable and you're still able to get the publicity for having done this project. So, you know, you can finesse that language, but it's really important that you have it in there. And expenses. So how many of you actually have a clause in your contract about expenses? Good, not everyone. That's a moneymaker. It really is. We charge for mileage, we charge for any trains, planes, automobiles. I don't charge for copying anymore or blueprints because we're not doing that much of it. And so I just add that into my design fee and pad it a little bit to cover things like that because so much of what we do today is electronic and we're using CAD, and so it's not necessary the way it used to be when I first started out. But it's something that I think you should all consider adding in because it's a moneymaker for you to recoup some of the expenses that you and your team are incurring on behalf of a project. So I would definitely include that. Okay, so what are some of the ways a contract protects you? Anyone? What are your thoughts? How does your contract protect you?
Well, recently we had a project where we
I'm going to come closer to you so everybody can hear you.
We clearly state what the scope is in our project, and we have a blanket one that we adjust according to the client. So sometimes a client is the entire house, and other times in certain specific areas. So recently we had a project, it's a perfect example, where she has removed a lot of items from the scope so that we could reduce the fee. And then here recently she came back and we were billing her for, now she had asked us to go into areas we had gone into before. And she said, no, this is included in the scope. And we said, no, remember on this date at this time, you signed these changes that were removed per your request, and we now have to bill you for those. And it was clearly stated that if anything changed within the scope, that she would then be billed those hourly fees. So that was something that covered us, that we could refer back to that contract, having her sign those changes to cover us for later having to bill her for more and hold her accountable for that.
Excellent, excellent. Was everybody able to hear? Okay. So I do think that one of the things that I always say is, because my contract is so many pages, I have the clients, and not just one, some of them will say, oh, you know, I can just sign for my partner or my husband or my wife, whatever. they initial every single page of my letter of agreement. At the bottom, I initial and they initial, and then both parties get a signed copy of the letter of agreement. I then scan it, keep it on my server, because paper can sometimes find its way into other places that we can't find. And so if it's on your server or in a cloud drive, I think that's a very, very safe way to do it. But you do want to protect yourself. And how many have ever heard a client say, oh, I just signed it, I didn't even read it, right? I can't believe that people do that. It's not like a mortgage document that you're signing, 300 pages and praying that your lawyer knew what you were signing. It's a letter of agreement for either your home or your office or, something that you're doing in a public space, but it's not rocket science that you can't read it. And it's really the obligation of the client to read it. And I'll say, have you really understood? Do you understand this page before we go to the next page? Because even though it sounds like you're dumbing it down, quote unquote, you're really not. You're doing this to protect you, but also to protect them. Because at the end of the day, you want them to be happy. You want them to have understood everything that you're giving them and doing for them. And if they don't have that feeling, they're not going to refer you. And for me, referral is the best way that I've ever gotten business. And repeat clients, they come back to you again and again. You want that. So really be mindful of that. And it was great that you did that. And then she acquiesced, yes?
Yeah, it's awesome because my boss is she's been in business for 20 years and I've only been with her for 3.
Mm.
So there's times when she's like, I want you to do this, 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 and this. And why are we doing all these redundancies? And then when something like this happens, I'm like, okay, this is why we do that.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to see that come full circle, to be able to understand my boss's logic behind things.
No, I think it is. It's great. So your liability, that's to me the biggest one, but financially, it protects you from liability, and it gives you support. And you have people around you in our universe of support people that will also help you with this. So you want to mitigate. I think mitigate is like a really fabulous word. Mitigate potential liability. That's what a contract does, or letter of agreement. It sets up the goals, it sets up the structure so that everybody understands. You also always want to keep, and this is something that I think is so important for us in this field, to be a communicator. To never assume that someone else understands something the way that you understand something. A lot of times I'll have clients repeat back to me different things. Like, so what is your understanding of this? To make sure that they truly understand the language with which the letter of agreement and the spirit of the letter of agreement is coming through. So sometimes when you do that and you have them repeat back to you, and not word for word, but their understanding, that makes it even more of a clear conversation. And I think that everybody appreciates that at the end of the day, because a lot of times what they're repeating back to you is not the spirit or the intent. So you then have that chance to rectify that, reverse it, and make sure that everybody's in agreement. So, liability insurance. Raise of hands, how many of you have liability insurance that own firms? Obviously, if you're working for someone, your bosses are taking care of that. I've had liability insurance since I started, because I'm always that, have to have it, have to have the most that I can have. And then as I grew my business and did show houses, I took riders. Any of you doing show houses that have not taken riders need to do that. Workers' comp, you don't have to have it personally as a business owner, but I take it on myself too. What if you get hurt? I have disability insurances as well, but workers' comp is important for you and your team. The Hanover guy that's here, I've been with whoever ASID has had since I've been in ASID. So like 30 years, I've used the insurance because their group rate is really, really good, and their policy is tailored for us as designers. So errors and omissions, and also the riders that help you. I mean, a lot of us, we transport things, right? For our clients, they get in the car, or they're on the train. I remember going into the city with artwork on the train, and you want to have that protection. So please make sure if you don't have it, go visit and just get a little bit more information from the guy that's here in Hanover, or go to your insurance agent and ask, about comparable, because sometimes, you might find something that's a better fit for you with someone else. But just educate yourself if you don't already have this. And even if you have it, it's always good to kind of get a pulse on what's happening now, what other people are doing, and maybe your rates aren't as good as you think they are. So it's always good to explore that as well. Okay. So for me, your contract is with your client, but then I remember speaking to Alan Siegel. He was doing a little talk for our chapter, and he said, how many of you actually read the vendor contracts? Those really tiny print when you get an invoice, right? Honestly, I don't always read them. And ever since he did that talk, I read them full. I make my clients read them because my clients are actually paying directly to 90% of my vendors. Anyone that will take their money, that's how they pay. I make sure that they've been read and that they're signed off on, because a lot of times there are issues. And Susan and I were just having this conversation yesterday about a vendor that had a policy about if something is delivered to a receiver, that's where their buck stops. And then it got to the final destination and a mirror fell down from a frame and they were responsible for fixing it. So you really want to know, what are your responsibilities? What are the vendor's responsibilities? And for me, having long-term relationships with my vendors, I'm really loyal to my vendors. And so I feel very protected by the people that I use. I'm always scared the first time that I go to use a new vendor that hasn't been vetted or nobody knows. And the worst right now for me, and I don't know how many of you feel this way, but the web is a scary place. Like the things that are coming come damaged, no one checks them. Even when I send things to a receiver and they show me the pictures of it, then they can't find it when it comes day to deliver. And these are white glove services that have been around for years. I think everybody is so overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that's happening through the web that you really have to have these checks and balances. So if I could make any recommendation, and most of you are probably already doing this, but those of you that are working for firms and may go out on your own one day, having those really strong, long-lasting vendor connections makes you so much more protected, and it just elevates you. It really does. And then those vendors go to bat for you. They really do. So I would highly recommend that. Okay, so with your clients, how many of you have clients that are lawyers? It's fun, right?
Try not to.
So they know that they can just get out of anything, right? That's the way they are. In my 30 years, I have only had one dispute. I've never had to go to arbitration, which is the way that I write in the clause in my agreements. I don't want to be going to court. So arbitration is kinder and gentler. And also make sure, if you have that clause, that the arbitration would be in your city where you work. Because you could be doing a job in Florida and you live in Connecticut like me, and you don't want to be doing arbitration in Florida. Okay? You want to be doing arbitration where your office is, and make the client have to come to wherever that is. So be mindful of that and make sure that's in your arbitration clause. When you have communication with your client, there are going to be things that go wrong. I mean, every project has its own set of incidentals that happen, little snafus, sometimes bigger snafus. But it's the way in which we address it, handle it, and how quickly you get in front of it instead of behind it that makes or breaks the relationship with that particular client. And ASID is a sea of people that can help you navigate those waters. For me, I was on my own. I had one staff member at the time, and I had an issue with a client, and I called on a fellow who was really, he's passed since, but he was just so brilliant. And I said, can I just ask you something? Can you look at my agreement and tell me what I need to do? And he gave me his advice, and it was gold. So I urge you all, especially younger, emerging professionals and newer designers or people that are just on your own, reach out to members in your chapter or people that you know nationally to give you guidance. Everybody's willing to help you. And for me, that was the best gift in the world. It just elevated ASID even more in my eyes than I was thinking about it before. So you really want to think about how you get in front of something, okay? Because words can hurt you. It's not, oh, don't worry, we'll deal with it. Be careful, and be careful what you put in writing. When a client sends me an email, we've all gotten these, oh, the table came, I don't like it. I don't write an email back. I say, let's schedule a call. I understand that you're not happy, let's schedule a call. So address that they're not happy, or I understand that you have a concern, I understand that something wasn't done the way that you thought it would be done. You're not admitting blame, you're saying that you understand them. Mirror back to them, and then say, let's get on a call, or let me come by and meet with you so that we can address this right away. That will go such a long way to your client feeling safe and knowing that you're protecting them, but what you're really doing is also protecting yourself. And you always have to think about that. So be very careful what you put in writing, okay? Until you've actually hashed it out verbally with a client. Okay, so there's always two sides of the story, right? We all think we're right, and the client thinks they're right. But the truth is always somewhere in between, if we're really being honest about it. There's always some truth to both sides of the story. And so if you can, put yourself in the client's shoes and get out of your own ego about something, you're going to understand them a little bit more. And you're going to be able to go to bat for them in different ways. Sometimes it's going to cost you money. That's why you have errors and omissions. I've, thank God, never had to use my insurance. It's just something you pay for, but it's there, and that's why it's there. It's to help you. So really think about how you can make it so that that client loves you for life. Because 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients. And then they repeat and repeat. And that's what you want. That's the way that you build a successful firm. So, arbitration versus litigation. Has anyone ever done arbitration here? Awesome, if nobody's had to. Anybody done litigation? Couple of times? Small claims? Litigation can be small claims. Sometimes it's going to court. I mean, I have friends that do very, very large projects and they've had to go to court. Or sometimes they're an expert witness on another case. So litigation can be extremely expensive. The only one that makes money on the litigation is the lawyers. Okay, it hurts the clients, it hurts the designers. So if there's any way for you to get out of it, I would. I've had one dispute in my entire career. It happened a couple of years ago. I read through my whole agreement with the clients. They signed, and then their son, who was a year old, had leukemia, and we did so much work. I didn't bill them right away because I was being sensitive to them being in the hospital with chemo on a 1-year-old child. And then I sent my bill. And the husband's sister, who said, oh, I have legal training. She didn't. She went to Harvard, but for business, not legal. And she started to try to tear my agreement apart and use the language and manipulate it. So I hired an attorney to just look at what was happening. And at the end of the day, it was so stressful for me to have to deal with this and think about this child at the same time that it was $10,000. I was like, I'm done. They paid me a huge design fee to start because it was kitchen and bath, and it was like a flat fee of $25,000 for kitchen and bath. And then everything else was going to be product and consultation with the architect and the contractor. So this particular bill was $10,000, and I walked away from it. Because sometimes it's better to not have that negative energy following you, because if you have negative energy around you, are you going to attract positive energy? Are you gonna attract new clients? Absolutely not. So you wanna get rid of that. You wanna only have good vibration around you because that's how you're going to attract more of what you want. So I did everything and more than I should have done for them. I gave them every deliverable I promised and I walked away. And it was the best $10,000 I've ever spent because it was a big lesson on making sure your billing is going out when it should, making sure that you really have yourself buttoned up because there was one clause in that particular agreement that they were able to manipulate. So went back, re-massaged it, and it was a learn. It was a real learn. Was it a win? Yes, because I got out and I didn't have to litigate or anything like that, and for $10,000, that will never kill me at the end of the day. I won't miss that when I'm 75 or whatever. But it's something I really do want you to think about. In every agreement, give yourself a clause where you or the clients can opt out. Still having to pay for fees that have been accrued during the time that you've been working, but a 7 days notice that either party can terminate an agreement should be in every single contract that you write. Okay, a little bit about fees, because fees are a part of every contract. So there's been a lot of talk lately, a lot of buzz about how designers are charging, and it's different in commercial and residential worlds, but the commercial designers that are my colleagues have also been telling me that they're getting a lot of pushback, more so than they ever did in terms of budgets and sourcing and how clients want to work. So it's not just in the residential arena anymore, it's all throughout all of our disciplines that we practice. So fixed fees are really trending, fixed or flat fees. Hybrids are trending because if you can have a menu of services, you can pretty much satisfy any client with a menu of services of how you can work with them. I never give my fees to a client before I start a job, like before I've written up my agreement, assessed the project. I have a questionnaire, which is also in my book if anybody wants it. And it's a huge questionnaire. They have to fill out, send back to me with their budget. And if they won't do that, I won't even go to the project and look at it, because that's like the screening layer. So if they're really in it and they really want to work with you, they're going to fill out the questionnaire and they're going to give you a budget. Because anyone that tells you that they don't have a budget is not being truthful. We all know what we want to spend for a project. So I say, you've got to give me a range. If you won't give me the exact number, then give me a range of maybe $5,000 to $10,000 within. And then you know whether or not this is your ideal client, whether or not this is going to be a good fit before you even get on the phone with them. So you can have a staff member or pretend your family members as staff if you're a sole practitioner. They don't have to know. And make sure that that's been screened. So then I do a 15 to 20 minute, what I call a get acquainted call. And I hear about the project a little bit more. I've got the questionnaire. I see that they have a budget that works with us. If they don't, the staff writes them back. I'm sorry, but right now, this is not a budget that we can really work with. We really wish you the best and thank you for thinking of us. And it goes away. So once I do the get acquainted call, we talk a little bit more about what they want and their style and etc. And then I arrange to do a consultation. I charge for the initial consultation. And what I do is if they hire me, then I credit it back through the design fee. So it's hourly and it's prorated depending on how long I'm with the client. And I do give some ideas, but you don't give it all away. You all know that, right? You do the why and the what, but not the how. So think about that as you're going out, because that's a marketing tool. Because if you give away your how, then you've given away your secret sauce, and you don't want to do that. And they've had a chance to look at your website. They know what you're capable of. They've read testimonials. They've probably Googled you and looked at other things that you've done. Hopefully you have some videos, because I know for a lot of clients, they've actually told me that they hired me because they watched a video and they thought that I was relatable and that they could work with me before they met me. So sometimes they can what we call self-select on the web. So you might want to think about that. Even if it's not something you're comfortable with, just do it. because people wanna engage with you that way. So think about that. You also, if they start to say, well, if you're coming for a consultation, what am I getting for that? This is your intellectual property. You look at a space and you know in your brains, right, already, you can see that space coming to life. That's what you've trained for. That's intellectual property. Don't give it away, okay? Give a little, always give something. Make people feel they're getting value for you coming out and seeing their space and meeting with them. But it's really an interview to see if you're both a good fit. So think about that as you're moving forward. Okay, so how many of you are still doing hourly? Not that many. Okay, awesome. For me, hourly is tough. It's better now with QuickTime and other apps, but even if you're doing hourly, when you look at all the hours and you're rating your bill, how many of you say, oh my God, they're never gonna pay me for all those hours, right? If we're all gonna be honest. And so you're depriving yourself of money that you should get. So when I do fixed fees, at this point, I kind of know how much time it's gonna take to do the drawings, to do the specs, and then move into the purchase management fee. So I can figure that out and I know. But if it's a full whole house, think about doing it by the square foot. And depending on the finishes and the level of the house, if it's a really high-end build, your fixed fee is gonna be higher because there's gonna be more details that you have to deal with. So you can think about massaging that and using a per square foot. You may not even wanna tell the clients that your fixed fee is calculated by the square foot because that might be something that you just use as your formula. Or maybe you wanna share that. A lot of designers are doing this now, and it's very profitable to do that. Because when you're doing, especially a new build, and you're working with a builder and a client, you've got to interface with all their subs, you're gonna be dealing with trim and details and moldings, and maybe then they say, what do you think about the siding outside? Have any of you had that with your clients? All of a sudden, you're an exterior designer as well as the interior, and oh, the gardener is thinking about X, Y, and Z. You want that whole full vision to be holistic so that all the plantings jive with what you're doing inside, so it's not at a dichotomy. So always think about that. I use a blended system, and I like using that.